Yep, we're live. And so good morning to everybody. Good morning to Caddy. We already have a good morning to both of us from there. So I've got some wacky stuff going on. How about you? Have you seen anything bizarre this week?
Oh, I mean, it's nuts with what Meta did, and
Yeah.
just the I have to, I guess, admit that I'm somewhat surprised that we haven't had a more positive movement in the DV world, and that Meta issued with Judge Tucken, disappointing order. I mean, yeah, so crazy, disappointing, regrettable, all those things, sure.
Yeah. So Caddy is asking about the stay. So far the stay is just in the right case, but it's obvious that we're going to get stays in all the cases, right?
Well, I mean, the stay for Meta is there. They're going to take up. So Judge Meta issued a stay so long as the government sought expedited appeal or expedited briefing and appeal above, and they're going to do that. We've already had some communications from them, and so the stay will be effective for 30 days, and then Judge Meta will consider. But at this point, I think the base case has to be that the DV2020. I'll only speak to our class in Gomez, that stay will stay, and the issuance of those 9,095 visas will remain on pause for now, and we'll move to a briefing schedule on the merits of the appeal. And so let me explain what that will be. That will really be, did Judge Meta have the authority to reserve these visas, or was the Department of State doing everything properly? Maybe I put those out of order, but the first step is, did the Department of State really do things wrong by not processing any visas when there was an entry ban? Or did they really do the right thing? Were they correct? And if they weren't correct, and could Judge Meta reserve visas? And those are really the issues. And we're going to have a panel that's going to decide that. And until then, I just really right now I don't believe that they're going to process any of those visas that are reserved.
Right. Is there a sort of a formal timeline to the expedited appeal?
We're going to agree to a briefing schedule. I mean, and then I think the judges, there'll be a 3-panel judge of the DC Circuit, will take a look, and we're going to ask for a resolution as soon as possible. I mean, again, everyone loves me to make predictions so they can tell me I'm wrong, but I would say I wouldn't expect a decision in a month or 2 months. I mean, I would expect maybe an argument to be had and a decision by the panel, July, August.
Yeah. And so we're likely to see, I think we've got to be a little bit cautious of anything we say, I'm sure, because we don't want to sort of add fuel on the fire to the government's case in any way. But at the same time, the expectation should be that it would be a delay until later this year. If they started to issue visas, for example, in August, it is technically possible to get those visas pushed out, but not that likely. So it would seem that there would have to be, if we win on the appeal, there will have to be a change in the order to allow us, more time to issue the visas and a further delay. I'm sure somebody is going to bring up one of the cases. It wasn't Gomez. I don't know if you were listening in. I think it was Go or Good Luck. I think it was Go, perhaps. And it might have been Gomez, actually. Now I'm saying that. I can remember vividly the government lawyer sort of talking around, well, we'll just issue them in 2023. And people have latched onto that as being, well, you should have taken that as an offer. But if you were listening to the hearing at the time, the government lawyer that was saying that built a sort of, a sentence and a couple of phrases around the fact that, well, we can control this later because we can effectively not select anybody for DV 2023, and therefore we can issue them in 2023. It wasn't a genuine offer to delay processing and give people a sort of a window. It was actually more of the robbing Peter to pay Paul. And it was as soon as I heard the words come out the lawyer's mouth, I knew, number one, this guy doesn't understand how the law's written, and number two, it's not a genuine offer at all. He's just looking to delay things until
Right.
sometime never.
And I don't think it was really an offer that was in lieu of, or in exchange for an appeal. Like, they wouldn't appeal if we took that
Exactly.
offer.
No, it wasn't genuine.
We'd still be in the same. I mean, number one, it wasn't in the best interest of our class of people. They didn't. If we had taken that type of deal, I think people would have, hung us out to dry. That's not in the best interest of the class. And number two, it wasn't in exchange for the drop of an appeal. And let's go back here. I mean, and again, I don't want to throw stones, but I will. Our legal team would have expected this new administration that really campaigned on restoring our kind of open-armed approach to immigration, with diversity visas being center of that. And when he rescinded the immigrant ban, actually specifically addressed the importance of diversity visas. So did we get lulled into this kind of belief that they wouldn't appeal and would be friendly with us and work towards this to basically in a justice-based administration? I think that was part of it. And in fact, we've been duped. And this administration has not acted friendly, unfortunately. And just really, it's not that they are, anti-diversity visa. I don't have proof of that. I think what the Department of Justice is doing is they really, in their client, which is the Department of State, they believe they have the absolute unfettered discretion, meaning there are no limits on what to do. So if they want to, they can issue one visa, diversity visa, and don't ever let anyone tell them that they can go past the deadline. And that is it's just a non-starter for them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right to point those 2 points out, because it's not about hatred for diversity at all. I absolutely don't accept that premise at all. It's not about racism. It's not about anti-DV. It's all bullshit, frankly. It's about protecting the fiscal year and the ability, their power as they see it, to make ultimate choices. Kind of similar to the consular non-reviewability thing. And they don't like to be told that they are reviewable in any way. They don't like to be told by a judge they have to do things. They don't like it, and they're protecting.
I will say, this year, I do see the Department of State actually saying, for the first time, that the law requires us to turn our eyes away from diversity visa applicants. That's new for them. They never really came with that, even under the Trump administration. And now they're saying, in this, hey, we're going to go back to a pre-pandemic pace of adjudications. And if that means diversity visas get left off the ride, well, that's okay, because that's what the law tells us that is required. And I think that is something that is what we're going to end up litigating this year. Because I think that is actually fundamentally wrong. So what they're saying, in essence, is Congress has told us we have 55,000 available. How we get to do that, if any, if we want to do 10, if we want to do none, they left all of that discretion to us. And if this year, if we want to do let's say if I'm the embassy in Cairo and I feel like doing non-immigrant visas and immediate relative family-based visas, and I don't want to do any diversity visas, that's okay, because that's we get to decide what we want to do, and that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, exactly. Very clear. That's what we're seeing in some embassies, whilst other embassies are doing some pretty good numbers. It's bizarre, really. Okay, couple of quick questions. Oh, a quick thing I wanted to point out. Look what I got this week.
Look at you. That's great. That's very
America,
good.
Man.
That's good. That's good, man.
So
now you
yeah,
gotta go get a stamp. You gotta go somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, quick question. Does Montreal Embassy no longer taking DV? They have taken a few, but there's a lot of backlog, right? So there's backlog everywhere. I actually want to talk about a weird thing I heard in the last few days, which is really bizarre. But let's just see. Will it be cancelled by the Congress? No. Every bloody year, Sanjeev. Every year. Some stupid, never heard of him congressman, usually from the right, brings up a new law, a bill, which everybody outside this country apparently thinks is like instantly law. And it's just a suggested bill that we should kill the diversity program. Now, one day there will probably be a reform of immigration in this country. One day there will be, but it's very hard to do. Very hard to get everyone to agree. And one dumbass congressman bringing up a rule to say I'm going to kill the DV program is nothing. It's not news. It happens every year. So please ignore it. All right.
I would say though, the cause for diversity visa reform, I mean, the whole system is broken. We've known that for years. I actually worked on legislation in 2013, which was like the last time we had I think a good shot at it. But the diversity visa reform, if nothing else, the last 3 years have really told us that the system we have with the KCC and the Department of State and embassies, it's a waste of money. Number one, it's a waste of resources. It's non-transparent, and Congress probably needs to get in there and fix it. And if that means making it more, it definitely has to be more simple, more straightforward directions to the agency, and some type of manner by which we don't have people living in a state of crisis for a year, because it's really hurtful. I mean, I deal with it 24 hours a day, and I know you do too. I mean, the emotional toll on the applicants is ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, there's a question here, and I just want to give a little bit of advice really to people like Pathak. There are people who are still potentially going to get visas from Gomez, from Go, from Good Luck, etc. But you're exactly right, Jesse, in what you're saying. The emotional toil that the cost for these people is too much. And if that is the case, then for someone like Pathak, you can certainly choose to move on with your life and forget that you ever heard about the DV lottery, or try again in some future year. That was always an option for you. It still is an option for you. But of course, this is Jesse and other lawyers are trying to protect something from nothing. Your chances would otherwise have been gone. In fact, 7,000 people in 2020 got visas thanks to Jesse and other lawyers that worked on the Gomez and Acker and Fong Jong and Mohammed cases and all of those cases. Without that, those 7,000 people wouldn't have got the visas. And so, there has been positive effect. But yeah, you can keep on waiting, but, you don't put your life on hold. You have to live your life, right?
Well, and the difficulty is, if we look at this year and trying to be a little bit better about, litigating and how we can help people, reservation is not something I want to be in the game of doing if it comes to it this year. And that's why, some of the lawsuits, mine in particular, started earlier, because I did kind of have it in the back of my mind that even if there was no appeal and no stays, having people wait for is just adding to the pain, right?
Yeah.
It's just not, it's not in the best interest. I mean, especially when we know they can do 7,000. I mean, go back to 2020 and September 2020. I mean, this is what's so frustrating, right? They were not in a position. We were in the middle of a pandemic, just actually the beginning, the worst part. We didn't even know what we were dealing with. It was September 2020. They had done 12,000 visas and hadn't done a damn thing in like 4 months, maybe longer.
Yeah.
Judge says, listen, Judge Mehta, after the hearing, hey, you better do something between now and September. I think it was 24th. And they got enough interview notices and enough interviews done where they issued 7,000 in those 3 weeks. Right?
Yeah. Well, they did. Now, so let me just clarify what actually happened. I think some of the lawyers don't really understand this. So what actually happened was that so they got the order on September 4th, Judge Mehta's order. Between September 4th and the 30th, they sent out 1,020 new 2NLs. So that accounts for about 2,000 of the 7,000. The remainder of the 7,000 came from interviews that had already happened earlier in the year, or or people that were already scheduled for interview earlier in the year. In other words, the consulates, not KCC, did the majority of the work in that time period.
That's an important clarification. But nevertheless, let's just step back. It was an amazing effort in proof that if the will is there,
absolutely,
they can do it. So I mean, when they come to us and say, "Well, we're at max capacity, which we can't do these things that you're telling us to do," there's a perfect example of, well, wait a minute, and they did it again last year
in 2021. Exactly, they did the same.
So I just. I don't know if it's a reason to be hopeful or it's a reason to be more frustrated, but it speaks to what can be done, and then it begs the question of, well, why are you making it so hard?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the question I get all day. Like, well, what do you think? Like, why are they doing this? And I'm like, I don't know.
And the thing is, KCC is a zero cost program to the government in terms of how it's funded. It's paid for by the visa interviews. If you do more visa interviews, you get more fees. That pays for more KCC staff. You can increase the size of your KCC operation because you believe you're going to do more processing. You can do that, all right? There's no act of Congress or budgetary impact on that. So, it is frustrating. They can't seem to sort of figure this stuff out, But I must admit, I think immigration reform, if it comes, probably would move. There would be some program that was more sort of points-based, similar to other countries and that sort of thing. And the DV lottery program, from my mind, is it's a lifeline for people that wouldn't have a normal way of coming. And it's an important program in my mind. I think it's very important. There's been some very significant efforts and changes and positive things to this country because of DV winners. So, I think I hope it continues. Anyway, all right. So, is it correct that the good luck order will be delayed because of the recent stay for the Ryan Gomez? So, basically, all of these cases are pretty much in the same boat. Judge Mehta is sort of, I think, well, again, I don't want to go into the wording of his order too much, but yeah, there were a couple of sort of annoying things and disappointing things in the way he wrote the order, sort of opening the door to questioning himself. I understand that's a good, a good method of allowing conversation to happen, but yeah, there was a little bit too much of that, and he also referred to, what was the term he used? The discretion piece.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the authority. Yeah, but I mean, certainly, kind of recognize the government's claim that, the broad or wide discretion in areas of visa issuance and processing. I mean, something along those lines. And that's true to a point, but there are laws that we have, and he recognized the good faith that has to that binds the agency, right? I think what, playing devil's advocate for Meta, I think what he says is, during that, he buys into the COVID caused us to operate with less functionality, and our good faith thereby was affected, so that we could show good faith by simply doing less. And I would say I don't buy that argument necessarily, but if you look at the statistics from 2020, they were not operating in good faith until that order on September 4th came down, which made the statistics at the end of the day, at the end of the year, the data looked a little bit more historical. They never reached the ratio, and I've been calling this the 9% ratio of immigrant visas to diversity visas, which are immigrant visas, but a subcategory. So let me explain. If you go back and you look at recent history, it is always proved that the number of immigrant visas issued has always been given, 9% of those total has been allocated to diversity visas. And I don't know why it matches up that way, but it correlates almost perfectly, at least from 2016 to 2020, although there's a slight dip in 2020 because there was a total ban.
Yeah.
And the argument that I'm making now is that type of correlation needs to continue, so that if they go and issue 500,000 immigrant visas this year, and there's not a 9% ratio, which would put us at what, right? 45,000, then it's not good faith. And right. I don't know if the judge will accept that, but I feel very strong that if it's at 2%, where I think it's tracking now, there'll be some serious questions asked, like, what is your strategy here?
Right. Well, so their argument is that they've been told to prioritize, family reunification and employment based, right? Your point being, well, you were doing 9% before. Why aren't you doing 9% for DV now? And really the point is, well, okay, if this has always been part of law and it hasn't changed, then number one, which piece of the law are you referring to? And number two, why weren't you doing that in 2016 to 2020?
Right.
It's difficult to make an argument about the 9% because that's also not in law. But you can say, well, you've been doing 9%. You just think you can just randomly throw these numbers around. I mean, is that, there's no support for your justification there.
Right. I'm trying to get away. I guess as my legal strategy is trying to get away from ambiguous language like good faith or unreasonable or not fair, and try to make it simple and use data rather than narratives, because narratives are bullshit and everyone has one. I don't want one. I always want to be like, hey, this is what you've done. Why aren't you doing it now? And if you don't have a good explanation, go get the limit. Okay. And that's why I actually wanted to maybe work with the department rather than fight them, to say, how do we keep this ratio this year? Because it looks like you can do it, and abandoning it, is really offensive. And it's actually the president, who actually controls the State Department, has actually said you kind of really want to stick to this. And so there is some order of discretion. We're not telling them, hey, don't do we're just asking them to go back to what's normal, to what's expected. Right. And it's not, as far as I'm concerned, you actually have to operate with a rule of reason. You have to consider all the factors. They actually are on record saying they were going to front load DV2022. Okay. So I'm putting my judge hat on, right? And I'm not a judge, and I never will be, but I'm putting it on, and I'm saying to myself, you said all these things, you have all this data. Why aren't you meeting anywhere near these numbers? Because we're not near the numbers. Right. And this is what I've told my clients. I said, listen, if you see a ramp and we get to like high numbers, it hurts our case.
Yeah.
Because I've always said, listen, if they come and they start, really ramping up 2-1Ls and interviews and issuances, it doesn't help our case. It actually hurts it.
Yeah.
But the opposite is true.
Yeah. So you can tell how much sausage they're making by seeing how much they put in the top of the feeder, right? And in March they set up 3,000 interviews, which would put them on pace to issue about 5,000 visas in March. Or probably not all would be issued in March, but 5,000 of those 6,000 people would get visas. In April, they had an opportunity to ramp up even more, because of the front loading, etc. But actually, it looks like they're only going to hit 3,000 again. And I think that they're kind of on that sort of pace now. I think they're thinking for 7 months, they could do 5,000. Having said that, some part of those 5,000 every month go into AP, and they need a bit more time, right? And so as you get towards the end of the year, the last 2 or 3 months worth of 5,000s wouldn't result in 5,000. Because you need AP time for those cases, so they tend to run out of time. But anyway, I think that I agree with you. I think they're trying to get to a certain level, but they're not trying to get to our level. What we consider is good.
I think that if we're going to fight, just to make it as simple as possible for those listening, I in my heart of hearts believe that the government thinks that 20,000 diversity visas is good faith in a year.
Yeah.
And our argument is no, that's not true. Our argument is 9% of total immigrant. I think it's my best argument for my clients is that it really needs to be a 9% ratio.
Yeah. Yeah. But also, firstly, your responsibility is to your individual clients. And so even, it has to be said, and people need to recognize, even if the number was 20,000 or 25,000, as long as your clients are in that number, that's actually, what you're supposed to do, Jesse, right? You're supposed to fight for your
no, don't get me wrong. And I'll take a minute just to address I have two cases right now, one for Sydney specifically, and one that's a group case. I wake up every minute of every day to respond to them. My heart bleeds for them and their families because I have some from war-torn countries. I have some from embassies that have done nothing. I see the pain every day. I see the frustration every day. And no, I have to win for them. I'd love to win for everyone. And I'm open to taking on clients. I know people always ask me if I am, and, I'm always going to listen. But no, absolutely 100%. That doesn't mean, this is important for everyone to understand. This doesn't mean that you have to join a lawsuit to win. Okay. And you don't have to join, be a client of mine to win. What it does mean is my responsibility, me personally, or a lawyer's responsibility is always to that client. It's an agent or fiduciary relationship. And so I have to do, case in point, if the Department of State came to me tomorrow and said, we'll take all your plaintiffs and we'll give them interviews in the next 3 months. Is that okay? And we won't do any other diversity visas. I would have to. I have no choice. Say yes.
Yeah.
Have to.
Yeah. But you spending a significant amount of time helping people, answering questions. I'm sure everybody really appreciates what you're doing at the moment. Well, for the non-plaintiffs,
it's really, I'm just riding on your coattails and some others that are out there, because there's not a lot of people who work in the space, number one. And that's something that I learned when I jumped into it myself in 2020. There's a ton of misinformation out there. There are bad actors out there who give people false information. And there are bad actors at the embassies who are not giving people the right information. And so that's why I've tried to come in, and I'll put down the regulations, the instructions, how to prepare, because there's just a lot. It's like this. It's like relying on social media for your news. You don't know really what you can believe. And if I can help in any way, it's good, because we also see the worst thing that can happen for a diversity visa applicant, honestly, is to make a mistake that is not corrected. You get put in AP and you either don't get out of it, or the year ends.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
avoidable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It drives me nuts when I see people say, I didn't correct my DS260 because I didn't want to unlock. And then they're risking denial rather than delay. And frankly, unlocking doesn't even cause delay in most cases. But this concept and these sort of bad actors out there say things like, oh, no, don't unlock. Don't correct your DS260. You'll put your case to the back of the line, which is bullshit. But that's what they tell people. And people then go into interviews with incorrect DS260s, find themselves either being denied or on AP, which can mean denial anyway. So
yeah, I mean, it goes back to, it goes back to really just a rule of thumb of life in general. I mean, if you screw up, own the mistake, admit it before you walk in there, and restore your credibility, because the worst thing that people can do is hide, minimize. I mean, just own it. Just own it.
Put it on record. Send an email. At the very minimum, send an email to the embassy saying you were just looking at your DS260. You realized you left off this trip to Mogadishu or something, and and you want to be clear about it, right?
You misspelled your son's name.
Yeah,
or
not a big deal, but just email it. Yeah.
And the other thing is, another rule of thumb, and I've started doing this, and it seemed like I just had thought that people would do this, and maybe they don't. If you've sent, because now there's a lot of people who can't unlock because they're in that quote unquote limbo stage, and I've said to people, listen, you can only control your messages to KCC. If you send a message saying I'd like to fix something and you can't because you're now in this limbo and you can't contact the consulate and you can't contact the KCC, save those communications, print them out, bring the stack with you when and if you get that interview, so you can show that you were always diligent about correcting things that you wanted to correct.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Let me move to a couple of quick questions. One we've just sort of kind of covered, and it's from Ram, who's a regular here. So seems like consular are rejecting visas for small city reasons. In this situation, can we seek legal help from Jesse? This goes to the consular non-reviewability in a sense, right? There's no formal appeal process. Is that correct?
If there's a denial, meaning a final decision, you're going to run up against consular non-reviewability, and unless we can show bad faith or just take on consular non-reviewability, which I am going to do, not in the diversity visa space most likely, but if it's a final denial, there's really not a whole lot of things you can do. If it's administrative processing or a refusal, and you see 221G, which is the statutory kind of provision they check, there is something you can do, because if they just sit there and do not, for lack of a better word, freeze you out, meaning you've given them what they want and they're sitting on it, they're not being responsive, there are things you can do. You can actually bring a separate delay action in federal court to say, listen, I got to get out of admin processing because I'm about to get cut off from the deadline. So sure.
Okay. All right, cool. That's good to know. But also the small silly reasons could be these mistakes on either the DV entry form or or on the DS260, etc. So those technically are not small silly reasons. If you essentially lie on your DS260, and maybe you didn't mean it as a lie, maybe it's just a mistake. But if you have incorrect information on there, that can be enough to get you disqualified. Now, I also don't want to give the impression some people give that, if you put your name incorrect on the original entry and you correct it on the DS260, more often than not 100% of the time, but more often than not, you'll be okay because you corrected it on the DS260. But if they suspect fraud, if they suspect that your name was misspelt to hide 20 other applications, all of which have got a misspelt name, right? Then they're gonna disqualify you, right?
And let me give a word of advice for anyone who would want to maybe contact me for help or help themselves. When you are in that room and you realize that they're not satisfied, get as much information as you can before walking out that door. Have them write it down for you. Okay. Yeah. We want to see it on paper. I know they don't want to do it, but they may do it if you're, and be kind with them. I mean, once it goes down like, hey, we can't make a decision today on your case, we're going to have to refuse you, because that's what they have to do. If they can't issue an approval, they have to either deny or refuse. There's not any other option really. Ask them to kindly write down what's missing rather than checking a box.
Yeah.
Specific as possible. And then also ask them, if I give you X, whatever it is, will you return and issue my visa, and when? And you're not going to get all the information, but again, the only time you're going to be able to contact them probably is that interview.
Yeah, absolutely. Good advice. Okay, I'm going to ask this question, or show this question about deadline for filing the DS260. So I had a weird thing happen this week. I was contacted by a previous winner. She was a DV2018 winner, I believe. Now, back in those days, we didn't have the ability to scrape the data with programmatic ways. The capture had been introduced. And the only thing we could do was get humans solving the captures. We had this incredible thing where loads of my blog readers were going in and solving captures as fast as they could possibly type. And that was collecting the SEAC numbers for us. It was absolutely mental time. We didn't have these neural networks and that sort of thing at that point. Anyway, she was one of the people that had typed in a lot of the captures. And she won again in DV 2022. She didn't have her passports together, and she asked me, when can I file? I said, you get on and file your DS260, because it's probably going to be delayed because they're delayed and all this sort of thing. She filed her DS260 on February 27th. And because this is someone that I've previously known, I trust this particular story. I don't always trust a single story, right? But I trust this story. She filed the DS260 on the 27th of February. She's already got her 2NL for Romania. So it's clear that they've said in all these affidavits, etc. They talk about opening the DS260s in submission order. They do, but it's clear that they are picking somehow. They're picking the cases they want to push forward, and so what it is about Bucharest, I don't know. What it is about that particular... Now, you could argue, well, she'd been through background checks and everything else in 2018. Maybe they were able to piggyback off that, but I don't know that for sure. I don't know. I don't have a good reason.
Is it their kind of pilot program now that is on fire? Because that's the way the pilot program says it should work.
Yeah. Oh, but it's not working like that for many. There are many people still filed back in May and June, still not gone through, right?
I gotta be honest with you. It's my morning coffee during the week about how people's cases are still processing. I mean, I know. The only thing I can tell them is
there's no sense.
What I know, right? And what I know is what I can read. I can't go to. I'm going to be in Kentucky at some point for a hearing, I'm sure, but I don't really know. I will say this though, and this is interesting for the audience. I did get, and this is new news, by the way. This is like breaking news, because I haven't even told you. I haven't even told you this.
Wow.
I got an email this week from the FOIA department at the State Department.
Oh, okay.
And they asked me, what is this pilot program information you're asking us about? I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. It was a human. It was a human person. It was a human person, because we, in our FOIAs for our clients, we asked them for all related data on how they're implementing the pilot program and how it's going, because we want to know about processing, and our clients deserve to know how their case is being treated, right? And it was a very nice email, and I was very, I'm try to be nice to everyone. And I kind of gave her all the information we have on the pilot program, and she was very responsive and said, "Oh, thank you. We'll get back to you shortly." So maybe we'll learn a little bit more, but it's just another thing we're doing for our clients, which is, and I recommend that everyone do it out there, is, doesn't hurt to get your own records, and through that Freedom of Information Act. But yeah, I thought you'd like that.
Yeah, I do, because
we're in a personal relationship now.
It reminds me of work though, where my daytime job, where somebody's doing something, and some executive comes up with, oh, let's call that a pilot program, or we'll form a task force, or we'll get a skunk works operation together. They put these lovely buzzwords on it. And actually, there's some engineer just sitting in the back saying, well, I just did that work yesterday. You don't have to put a fancy name on it.
But it speaks to the question that this person is asking about how the DV 2020 and 21 lawsuits affected processing. In fact, it was supposed to make it better and not make it worse, because they were going to go front load DV 2022. And we've seen, there were really massive problems. I really hope the FOIA information, and I know other attorneys are searching for it too. There was a massive problem because they were interviewing people who were not current. They were issuing visas to people who were not current. I think the consulates are better at not doing that now. But there was issues between pre-December 9th and post-December 9th. There was there were a lot of errors. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's see. So this is a question about embassy capacity. So there are embassies that are doing very well, right? And there are constantly these questions about, shall I move from this embassy to that embassy? And I'm trying to sort of encourage, and I think you're doing the same, encourage people to just not jump around so much, because some people are trying to change and then change back, and but I think we are starting to see some movement in some of these shit list embassies. I don't know, maybe we'll see a bit more soon. It takes time. It just takes time.
I got to be careful because if I say that there's been positive steps, I'm going to have 111 plaintiffs, clients of mine, and 25 or so down in Sydney telling me, what the heck did you just say? So I don't see a lot, actually, especially with, Addis in Ethiopia. Sydney is, of course, still at 0. Cairo is an absolute mess. Amman, there are embassies where it's not good enough if you do 10. We need a lot more than 10. And so I don't know, what are you and again, it goes to the lack of transparency. What is your plan? Because, and we're going to get a new visa bulletin, and you've set expectations, and okay, is it fake? Because I will say this, and capacity is another one of those words like good faith, where what does it mean? And again, I think we have to probably speak to historical, and I like to use just facts or math, and I don't know them as well as you do. But when we talk about capacity, and I hate to put you on the spot, but I know you probably know this number. What would be the monthly capacity at Cairo for diversity visas in a faithful year?
On the shit list.
I know now that because their capacity now is at bold-faced lie. I want to talk.
No. I mean, hang on, I'm just looking at. I did that analysis and figured out their pre-pandemic capacity. And I put that against the Cairo. So Cairo, it's several hundred. Yeah. So pre-pandemic, normal issued capacity of immigrant visas was 500 a month, and 50% of that was DV. And they've returned to about 60 or 70% of pre-pandemic capacity in non-DV immigrant visa processing.
So we should be getting 200 easy.
200, 250 per month was easy. Yeah, absolutely easy for Cairo, and more towards the end of the year. They issued regularly 3,000 to 3,500 visas in a year
with a over 90% approval rate.
Yeah.
It was a dream. That just drives me nuts. And I know, and the reason it drives me nuts is because my clients drive me nuts about it, because they're like, what can you explain this? And I'm like, I cannot explain that. I don't know. So when we talk about capacity, the consulate's going to always say we're at max capacity, right? They're not going to say, it's like when you ask someone to do something for you and they tell you, oh God, I'm at max capacity, I can't do it. What they're really telling you is they don't want to do it. Okay.
Right.
I mean, that's it. That's
Exactly.
that's the facts.
Exactly. Okay, quick question here. This is for London Embassy. Someone who's got their interview booked, but the earliest date was, for the medical was really too late for the interview. Don't reschedule would be my advice. There's no need to reschedule. London in particular will interview you and let you follow up with the medical a few days later. So do that. Why they told you to reschedule? Nuts.
Print the documents. Let them know that you did your best, and they'll hold the visa.
Exactly, they'll hold the visa. You'll be on AP during that month, and you're booked when you say 1/4. I think that's the English way of doing that, right? So she means the 1st of April, or he.
Yeah.
So your visa allocation is for the month of April. So as long as you get the medical within the month of April, you'll be issued.
Well, it says the earliest date for the medical was 3/26. Are they worried that they're not going to get the medical in time for the 4/1 appointment? Because that can happen.
Yeah, the London Embassy, the London physician, Harley Street physician won't guarantee to get the report in time. That's basically it.
Yeah, so that could just be a
couple of days later. Yeah, a couple of days, exactly. It's like, why would you cancel for that? Even if it was 2 or 3 weeks later, you wouldn't cancel. You wouldn't.
I've told people I wouldn't cancel for anything. If you get one of those interviews, I mean, again, you want to be upfront if you're missing something, but go have that conversation.
Go have the interview. The only places where that doesn't work is a few countries where an organization, IOM, controls the medicals, and they wield their power in a terrible way, frankly, and they tell people, no, I'm canceling your embassy interview, because we can't do your medical in time, right? Well, they shouldn't have that power, but apparently they assume that power. Okay, so let's see. People asking the sort of the typical question, who's responsible? So repeat again. Embassies set their capacity level. They don't say who they can interview, right? And so they can't say, Johnny has emailed us, we can interview Johnny now. They say, instead, they tell KCC, we've got capacity of 100 cases. We can see 100 DV cases, and KCC pick who goes, not the other way around.
You know what pisses people off the most, though? I mean, and this has become a recent issue that has driven a lot of people crazy, because the 2NLs come up per day, and if they get jumped on the number, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think people need to understand that it should go by regional rank number, but it doesn't. Okay.
And it can't. It can't, Betsy. So if take the case that I just talked about, where this person hasn't put their DS260 until February 27th. Well, so was the whole world supposed to just wait until this woman got off her button filled in a DS260? Of course not. So the case number thing we can't have a system that only strictly goes in case number order, because the humans are involved, right?
Right. Although technically speaking, the regulations actually say, you really do have to be faithful to that. Actually, you have to be a little bit more than faithful. You really do have to do that. But again, it speaks to, and this is an argument I would make to a federal judge, is if you have 8 embassies go rogue, you can't comply with the regulation, right? Because if I had OC number 1 and that person was assigned to Sydney, and Sydney decided it wasn't doing anything this year, right, which it's done, how can you tell me that it hamstrings the entire process?
Exactly. How do you go to OC2? Can't do it. You also can't do it if the guy with OC1 doesn't submit his DS260 and decides to do it in June of this year, right? A year later. You can't wait the whole year, right? So it's their system. Actually, in their regulations, they do say they do refer to the have completed processing. There's terminology even in the regulations. I think it's in CFR, or it might be in the INA. But anyway, it does talk about has completed processing.
So it is a 2-step, right? It is, once you complete the processing, then we go to order of consideration. right?
It should be. Yeah, you could make that argument. But of course, in other immigration, the DQ date is important, right? So if for example, you're talking about family based, they'll ask you, okay, what do they call it? The priority date.
Oh yeah,
Priority date
is your thing.
Is when you file. It's your thing, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, so they already have these concepts in normal immigration.
That's not when you're. So this is a good point. So when they do that priority date, it's when you submitted the visa petition to the USCIS,
right?
And so you're not going to be DQ'd until you become current.
Right.
And so maybe that's a way they change the system is why do anything until you're current?
Yeah. I mean, I have to find actually there was when we had that. Thank you for that conversation the other day about the CFR and the INA. When I was looking at both of those, there was a couple of things in there that talked about this sort of where you could latch onto this piece of wording and say, oh, it's to do with when you submit your DS-260 then. You could latch onto certain pieces of wording. There is a piece of wording, it's kind of like the Bible. There's something in it for everybody, right? Oh, yeah. Whoever wants to build a theory can jump into some part of the INA or the CFR or the FAM and take some solace from the words written there.
Yeah,
which leaves ambiguity only.
DOJ attorneys are on record of saying like, hey, it has to go by the order.
Right. But they're also on record saying
I know
cases will be processed when they submit the DS-260.
Yeah.
They're also on record as saying it takes 6 weeks to process. There's so much bullshit. And then recently they've been adding the has been processed bit. So in there, I mean, it's all nonsense, isn't it?
I do think though that people should again, it's never just one thing, and certainly not with diversity visas. But technically, if you've submitted a 260 that has been processed and you are seeing numbers around your number, you should feel good. If you're at an embassy, of course, that is open. Although
I worry about the case number because there's no way that's ever going to make anyone happy. Because people say, for example, oh well, I see they've scheduled up to 9,000, and I'm 9,500, so I'm good then, right? No, because not everyone under 9,000 was scheduled, and in fact, they've also scheduled people at 20,000. So don't get excited about your 9,500 because you see someone at 9,000 scheduled.
No, I think it goes back to this, and this is how it makes most sense for me. You got to ask yourself a couple questions. What is your embassy? I think that is probably right now the biggest determinant. Okay. What is your number? What is your regional rank number? Okay. And have you been processed? And if you can kind of walk back from there, you can set your expectations. Now, nobody's going to be happy. I don't see anybody happy until they get an interview notice.
No.
So, but if you can talk about those three things, what's your embassy, what's your number, and when were you processed, if and when. And then if you can check those boxes, or at least you can get an idea of where things are going. So that if you have an embassy that is closed right now, like Addis or Cairo for essential and purposes is closed. Okay. Well, the other two things don't really matter to me. Right.
Right.
Maybe the best case scenario, maybe the best example may be Sydney, right? Because if you're in Sydney and you can't check off this, if we haven't cracked the lock on that consulate yet, and it aggravates me to no end, I don't care about the other things.
Right.
I need the first thing. The embassy.
Yeah.
So
did you see there was Sydney actually responded to someone this week?
Yeah.
It wasn't like, okay, here's an interview date. It wasn't that sort of response, but their question to the applicant was interesting. It's like, well, I would only ask that question if they were thinking about doing something. So maybe there's some movement there.
I don't read too much into it, and I probably should just shut up, but I won't. The government did enter an appearance in both of our cases this week, which means they're starting to get a sense of, a plan in place, because they don't enter appearance right away. But so they've entered their appearance of an attorney at the Department of Justice, which tells me they're probably talking to their client at the embassies or Department of State about what the heck's going on. Because the Department of Justice, as an attorney, and I used to be there, I would have no idea that Diversity Visa 22 program was a problem until someone put the case on my desk and said, "Hey, look at this. Some jackass in Wasden Banis filed this lawsuit claiming that diversity visas are not being issued. What is look into it, talk to the client, and we got to respond by April 11th." And so they enter an appearance. They probably get someone on the phone or send an email. And Sydney's probably going to say, and they're going to say, "Hey, listen, is it true?" This is what I would say if I was a government attorney. "Is it true that you've interviewed 0 people this year? What is the reason for that?" And if the response from the consulate was, "Oh, we're moving," I would say, okay, I need a declaration. And this is where you get into those declarations from like the KCC or the consulate or the visa office. Like, okay, well, I got to go before a federal court and explain why Sydney's done 0. And some of these plaintiffs actually have really low numbers. They have all their documents are in. If I believe everything that this attorney wrote in the complaint, I don't have a defense. So what are we doing? And honestly, that's how I'd write the email.
Yeah. Oh,
so we'll see.
It's like, well, you would probably say, "Oh, so you were forced to move. What, the building was bombed then? You were forced to close your old office, and the new office isn't. Is that happen? Did that happen?" No, that didn't happen. Okay, so you knew you were going to have to move, and you knew the new building wasn't open, and you just decided to stop working.
I got to be
honest. Can you imagine the conversation? It's just,
this is why this just drives me nuts. And again, I cannot lose my experience working at the department. What I would honestly say, because I would be, I wouldn't want to litigate it with. I would just say, listen, can we just agree that you'll give these people interviews? Like, because I wouldn't know how the process works. Like, I wouldn't be so feisty about like it's my control. I get to do everything. I would just be like, hey, it's 20 people and their families. Can you just agree? Like, you have until September. Can we just? Yeah. Can you just give me a date?
Starbucks?
and then I can because for me as a government attorney, because then I can move to dismiss the complaint,
right,
or the case, right? Yeah. Just give them. You have until now. Yeah.
Why save $100,000 worth of fees on the bloody case or whatever? Yeah.
Why can't? Because this person is just going to say, "Why do I want to litigate this? This is," and they could easily do it for the other clients because it's only a couple at a couple embassies at a time. I mean, and it's really like, and this is why my initial take on this whole thing was, okay, we don't have an administration that outwardly hates diversity visas like we did. We have one that's actually saying we embrace them. Okay, well, let's work together then and find a way to get to 45 or 50,000 like you usually do. How do we do that? How do we do it? And God damn it, it just wasn't. It's just not happening right now.
No, frustrating. All right, okay. Couple of quick questions, just final questions then. Do we expect them to increase the processing? I'm still hopeful. I don't know. I go back and forth on this. They certainly could process all the DS260s. There is time. I'm seeing signs that maybe they're able to, to process some very, very quickly, as I just mentioned earlier in the call. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. The new VB will probably come out at the end of this next week. Perhaps the week after.
It shouldn't move.
No, it shouldn't. But again, don't come to my world, Jesse. It's great that you think one way and I think another. Don't get to the technical side of it.
Well, I'm on record. Everyone, believe me, everyone is going to take my clips and make and feed them back to me. No, I'm on record as saying the world's going to go current in June.
Right.
Does it, that doesn't reflect reality, but they're off the reservation. They've already
exactly. There's no sense to it anymore. There's no logic.
Fantasy land on that.
So let me keep with the logical approach, and you stay with fantasy land.
Let me ask you this. Do you think they would be as bold as to retrogress and bring numbers down?
Oh, they did in 2018 in Africa, and it was their own screw up.
So but let me explain what retrogress means. It means that actually, let's say Africa right now, 50,000, they can actually take it back and go to 35,000, even though they've already scheduled people though above 35.
Yeah, they did exactly that in 2018. Yeah. So they went current for all regions, and then they retrogressed Africa back to 39,500. And there were people that were scheduled between 39,500 and it was about 80,000 in that year, right up to 80,000. There were a few cases, and they issued those visas above 39.5.
I gotta be honest with you. What little mind, like the level of heat from the community I just pray that does not become.
I don't think that will happen, but I think what will happen is so we're already in this position where Europe is essentially current right now. Africa, mainly speaking, vast majority of cases are current, let's say. So Asia is as good as you can reasonably expect. So, but the thing is, there isn't time. They're not showing the willingness to schedule all these people. They're not gonna serve everybody under 50,000 in Africa. They're not going to do it, right?
No way.
There's no way. So, whether you're current or not is going to be, poor cold comfort later on. Whether they retrogress or not, it doesn't make any difference. If you don't get a bloody appointment, you're still pissed off, right? So, I don't know. I mean, my problem is March was their opportunity to really step up the numbers, and April was, in a sense, the last opportunity to do a really big volume. They haven't put the pedal to the metal, and that's frustrating. They can continue to do that in May and June, etc. But at some point, it sort of moves off of interviews and towards AP. They've got to do more cases of AP, or close out the AP cases.
No, basically. I mean, I think I said it. It was either last week or maybe it was on our chat where I was like, they're on a really big precipice, right? Like this is the crunch time as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, exactly.
It has to happen, if at all, now.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's just see if there's an interesting last question for us here from your side of things. I mean, so. I'm looking for one that's sort of more on the legal side. These are all these sort of questions. Do I stand a chance? We can't. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name. Yaz Yuwu, Mr. Zaza. That's easier. We can't say, right? There's no way we can say. If we give predictions, then frankly we're lying because we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen, so we can't predict it. I know you just want to be told something that makes you comfortable, but that's just not. It wouldn't be realistic.
I mean, I tell people all the time, and they probably get sick of hearing it. I mean, you have a chance until the clock runs out. I mean, you have to just keep playing the game until the game ends. But I mean, what are you gonna do? Give up?
Yeah, exactly. You just keep playing the game. All right. So a bunch of questions like that. One last question then here. Question: last year I applied DV while I'm in Somalia, but I put that I live in Uganda where I wanted to attend. Is it a problem? This thing of telling not the truth. So I don't understand why people sort of say what they think the government would want to hear or try and manipulate the system by not telling the truth. I think that's probably what you're saying here. So it's not a good idea to lie to the government in any way or to tell them not the truth. That's true. But, will this particular thing cause a problem? I don't know. I don't think so. But,
And let me just speak about that. It's very when you're getting with a diversity visa permanent residency in the United States. There are people who have been here working as computer scientists for Microsoft, Amazon's, all over wait for 20 years to get what you can get in one interview or with this opportunity. It's an incredible opportunity. Don't waste it by being dishonest, because it's easy. Because when you're seeking permanent residency, if they don't think you're honest, you're not getting the green card. That's right. So if you have to manipulate the truth, you quite honestly don't deserve a green card. And that's how the government looks at it. And quite honestly, that's how the law looks at it. Your credibility is everything. Yeah,
exactly. Just tell the truth, whatever it is. And I really want to underscore what you just said, that I work with a number of Indian programmers, etc. One of them just got his citizenship. He entered originally 2003. So it's taken him 20 years to become a permanent citizen. And during all that time, he was mainly on H1, obviously, but H1, then eventually a green card. And, under a green card, you're on probation, so, you are feeling a little bit different. I've had this discussion with my wife recently. I felt a little bit more secure, since receiving my passport, which I'll show again. I feel a little bit more secure because I knew that for example, as a green card holder, I'm essentially on probation, right? I'm being, I'm here conditionally. I've got to abide by some rules.
I tried to explain this to my children and the immigration system in general, because they said, well, what's a green card? Like, does it? And I was like, actually, it's a green card. But what it really means is you can stay here and you're really a good friend of our country, right? You're a resident. You can live here. We like you. You're like a friend. When you become a citizen, you become like family, and we can't get rid of family, right? And you have to come over every Christmas, and we can't disown you, right? It's just you're part of the clan now. It's like, that's it, and you get to vote, and you can do some really bad things, and you can be penalized for that. But we really can't there's very limited ways in which citizenship can be taken away from you. Usually it's because you lied getting it.
Exactly. Another good reason not to lie during your green card application.
I cannot tell you, I say it all the time: fraud, drugs, and lying. In general. Fraud is another form, but even being dishonest or misrepresenting who you are is, three things to avoid in our immigration system. It's really the three enforcement prongs that will cause you problems.
Yeah, indeed. All right, Jesse. Let's call it a day. Lovely conversation with you.
Let's really hope that again, we get a good week, good data. We hit spring. We spring forward right this week. So let's do it. Let's do it. Okay. All right. Be good.
All right, mate. All right. Cheers. Bye-bye, Jesse.